If this is our triple R sub-archetype boss unit, how incredibly powerful is Vanquisher going to be? Whatever the answer is, it is a great time to be a Narukami main. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got some really electrifying reveals as we've got 3 new cards for Narukami, which all are from the Eradicator sub-archetype. And we already knew at the beginning of these reveals for this set that Eradicator Descendant is gonna come back as a sub-archetype boss unit in a triple R form as well as a ASR card. And we then had the question, is this gonna be a standalone unit or are we going to get an entire archetype around it, which could be the new budget build for this set? Well, today we know the answer that yes, it's gonna be a separate archetype around the Eradicators, but is it going to be budget? That's the question, because this thing is looking super spicy and incredibly powerful and might be quite expensive to build. But to see what I'm going towards, let's look into the new cards and see for yourself what these Eradicators have in store for Narukami, because this is incredible and I, as a pseudo Narukami main, cannot be more excited for these reveals and looking really anticipated forward towards what we're going to see with Vanquisher. So first off, we're going to take a look at a new grade 1, which is Interrupting Eradicator, Nusku. And Nusku's ability is auto and Vanguard to rearguard circle. When placed, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Eradicator in its card name from among them, and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck. And if you put a card into your hand, discard a card from your hand. So this card is basically an identical skill towards the generic grade 3 searchers that every clan gets access to, but take away the plus 5k power, so it cannot be a 30k booster, but change the way that this card doesn't look for grade 3s, but it searches for any card from any grade from that specific sub-archetype. And with the Eradicators, that is going to be almost your entire deck. So this thing will always hit. You can search out other grade 1s, it can search out itself, it can search for your grade 2 as your right target, it can even search out for your grade 3s for your right target, or it can search for any unit that you want to put onto the rearguard circle for more offensive plays. This is an incredibly powerful card for Eradicator, and it's probably going to be one of the most obvious of include in any Eradicator deck, or at least 1 or 2 copies at the bare minimum to increase the consistency of your deck. Insane support card where we just are going to start off this video with. So yeah, really good. Now the second card that we have is a new double R grade 2, which is Lightning Whip Eradicator Suhil. And its abilities are continuous on rearguard circle. If it's on the additional rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 5k. So if it's on an Exol 2, it basically becomes a 19k beater. So it's like almost as if it's an Exol 1 circle. And if it's an Exol 1, it gets plus 15k, so it becomes a 24k beater. It's nothing really special. It's nice to have that free extra 5k power, but it means that if we call it in the early game to a normal circle, it doesn't really do anything besides just its normal skill. Because its normal skill is auto on Vanguard and rearguard circle when placed. If you have a Vanguard with Eradicator in its card name, so if you write it, you always fulfill this condition, cost, discard a card from your hand, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, bind it, and you draw a card. So this basically is a cycle effect with a bind effect attached to it, because you discard a card to then draw a card later on, and you also bind one of your opponents from the rearguards. That's a lot of value, which is really good, because the cycle is always really good, and you get a bind on top of that. Remember that a lot of other clans need to pay extra cost, like a Soul Blast or a Counter Blast, to even get the cycle. This is just get the cycle and also bind something. Really good value. But what's interesting enough, this card synergizes incredibly well with Rising Phoenix, because you first going to discard a card, so that card will hit the drop zone, and then you bind your opponent's rearguards. So in Rising Phoenix case, it will hit the drop zone, then it will immediately see the binding aspect, so that means it immediately will proc its own effect, and you can therefore then recall it immediately from the drop zone. So it doesn't turn into a cycle, but it then is a direct plus on the board, which also gives your Rising Phoenix a plus 3k power. That's a really good early game play or mid-lane game play if you want to make, because that gives you a lot of value over time. So yeah, once again, it makes Rising Phoenix even better, which is already a very incredible, powerful card in Narukami. Now, this is all just warm-up for the real thing that's gonna happen, because the new Grade 3 Triple R unit is gonna change everything here. Because the new boss unit for Eradicator is this new Triple R Grade 3 Eradicator Dragonic Descendant. And its first skill is very interesting, as its first skill is continuous when this card would be ridden. If your Vanguard is a unit with Eradicator in its card name, this card will be placed with all of those units' abilities until the end of turn. So not only does it has its own abilities, it can directly copy any of these skills from the unit that it rides on top of if it has the Eradicator name. And because this is a continuous skill, means it also copies the unplace effects and therefore can still trigger those unplace effects. So if we go back to the Grade 2 that we just looked at, we can then use its unplace skill again if we ride on top of Descendant. So on turn 2, we ride Lightning Whip at Eradicator Sue Hill, use its ability to discard a card, bind something from our opponent's front row circles, then draw a card, and then next turn when we ride Descendant, we can once again discard a card, bind something from our opponent's front row, and then draw a card. So every Grade 2 with a strong Vanguard Circle skill, we can then activate again once we ride into Descendant. But this card can also, of course, copy Grade 3 Eradicator skills as well. So, interesting enough, it can copy its own abilities twice, so that means you ride this thing as normal, then next turn you ride him on top of himself, it will copy its own effects, so it gets its second effect and third effect, which we're going to cover in a minute here, and then also it already possesses those skills on its own, so it basically doubles its skills, which is really powerful, as you're gonna see here in a moment. But it can also copy Gundler Buster Dragon skills. So that means you will have Gundler Buster Dragon with Dragonic Descendant's own skills. So this thing can get a sudden power increase, it can have multiple crits, and it can potentially destroy your opponent's front row with any problem. Now, that in itself already sounds crazy enough, but when we're going to look at its other skills, we can see the insanity that will unfold here. Because its own unique secondary effect is act on Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, cost Soulless 1, choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards, bind it, your opponent chooses one of his or her back row rearguards and move it to an open front row rearguard circle. So for one Soulless, you not only remove something from the field, you then also force them to move something to the front row, which then leaves them open to either other bind effects or then other attacks to attack into that unit. This is a really good cost for what you're going to get. Now that's already okay, it's also a rearguard circle skill, so you can use your other Descendant as a beater as well, so it's nice to have this as well. But the main attraction, which makes this card insane with his effect to copy other skills, is with its third effect. Its third effect is Auto on Vanguard Circle, once per turn, when it attacks, does not hit, cost, counter +1, and discard a card from your hand, stand this unit, and it gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So this is a restand skill which we come to expect from Dragonic Descendant. All the Dragonic Descendant cards, Stride Fusions or other reprint versions of him, always have a restand effect that works around the fact that the attack did not hit. Now, in itself, that might not sound that great, because if your opponent's at 2 or 3 damage, they're probably going to take the Vanguard attack, otherwise they're going to give you that restand. But that in itself also gives you the option to then cheese out a win if you run a lot of crits, because saying no guard to that leaves them open to the potential of just drive checking a couple of triggers and then win through that. So there's always that possibility, but in general sense, being on the do not hit effect means that you're only going to get value in the late game. Now there are a couple of interesting things here, because keep in mind, his first ability allows us to copy any effects of the unit that we ride on top. So if we have Gauntlet Buster Dragon as the first Grade 3, then we ride this thing on top of that, we are going to get the multiple crits and power increase of Gauntlet Buster Dragon. Meaning, Dragonic Descendant in that form will then swing for at least 3 criticals if we clear the front row, which is definitely going to happen if we're going to use Gauntlet Buster's secondary skill that allows us to destroy the front row. So in that case, your opponent most definitely are going to block that attack, meaning you will forcefully activate its restand ability, and that in itself will tell you that we have a restanding Gauntlet Buster Dragon on our hands. Like, that in itself already sounds ridiculous. That you can use a Gauntlet Buster Dragon and attack twice, no matter what. Like, some people already found Gauntlet Buster Dragon annoying that it was potentially do not have a PG, you will die. With this, it's basically, if you don't have 2 PGs, you will die. So, this is incredibly powerful in the right circumstances. But Gauntlet Buster Dragon is one way. The other thing that you can do is rewrite Dragonic Descendant on top of himself, meaning you will copy his secondary act ability as well as his auto restand ability. And what that means is that not only can you snipe 2 units, you can clear an entire column or just snipe 2 front row units and move the back row to the front, and you can restand him twice because you attack with the Vanguard, it does not hit, you restand him with one of your Dragonic Descendant abilities, and then you attack again, they guard again if it's in a late game, and then you can restand him again because you then activate the secondary restand effect of the Dragonic Descendant that you copied while you rode on top of that. That is a mini Dragonic Overlord the Cross, with some control options to boot, and synergistic plays with other cards that can search out your entire engine. What? So yeah, this card is incredibly powerful, and interesting enough, because this thing just states that any Eradicator it rides upon, means that this thing probably has a lot of potential in premium as well, because there's a lot more Eradicator cards out there in that format. And even if we disregard premium, the fact that it just searches for or asks for Eradicator means that this card has a lot of potential in the future if we get other grade 3 Eradicator cards or just other really strong grade 2 Eradicator cards. Because so far, the first time we ride it as a first grade 3, it might not be as powerful. So far, the only actual card that's synergized really well is Lightning Whip Eradicator Sue Hill. We also have Choho, but Choho's Vanguard ability isn't all that powerful. It costs a Counter Blast for the same thing that Descendant already does for a Soul Blast, so is that really that valuable? Probably not, but there is definitely a lot more potential in the future if we get more cards. But so far, this is already looking pretty sick. And this is also what I meant with the fact that this is a budget deck, but not really, because you probably are going to play this card alongside Gauntlet Buster Dragon to get the full power. And Gauntlet Buster Dragon is an old VR, which probably will cost you quite a big penny, and I would assume the card is at least $15 at this time of recording this video, while the secondary market is probably going haywire with this reveal, but who knows, maybe Gauntlet Buster is only $5, could be wrong here, but that's something we have to wait and see until this set drops and what the actual prices are going to be. But so far, as an Arakami main, I am super excited for these reveals. This looks incredibly fun to play, and the possibilities are almost endless with what this can do and how insanity your combos can be. And this is just the sub-archetype reveals. What's gonna happen with Vanquisher? Because Full Bronto is supposed to be the front leaning here. It's supposed to be in the front spotlight for the clan. So how powerful is that thing going to be? At the same time, I'm scared, but also really excited for that. So yeah, stick around for the reveals of that, because it will still take a while before we're gonna see that card, because next Tuesday we're going to get Fenrir, and next Friday we're going to get Nociel. So next week is going to be a very exciting week for different clans, but it means we're still at least 2 weeks away for the reveal of Full Bronto. So let's count down the days until we've got some more electrifying news. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new reveals for Eradicators. As I already explained, I am personally super excited for what we have here today, but I want to know what you guys think of these new reveals. Maybe I overlooked something in particular with the premium aspect, as I didn't really touch upon that all that much. There are probably maybe an interesting grade 2 or grade 3 that could synergize with this skill, but that's something that I will leave to you guys to explore. So hit us up in the comments down below. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider for making this video and everything on the channel possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Thief, and I see you guys in the next one!